Hi everyone, I'm Lily from Merino Evino, and I have been asked by a few people to do some spinning tutorials, so that is what I'm going to do today. You can only see part of it, but this is my Ashford Traveler's spinning wheel. And I actually just replaced the drive band because I hadn't in a while. So hopefully this goes well, otherwise you will be seeing me troubleshoot some. And I'm still learning how to take care of my spinning wheel and do maintenance on it. So any advice for that or videos I should watch would be, I'd be grateful for those in the comments. One tool that I think is really useful, and this is from Katrinkles, is one of these WPI measures. It has a ruler right here for 1 inch, and so you can do wraps per inch that way. But it also has these cute little things to show you like how thick you're working with or how thick the yarn is. So this is about fingering weight. I was commissioned to spin, it's kind of between fingering and lace depending on how tightly you pull, but you probably want it loose, but just kind of lays in there. And so I just connected this to my spinning wheel because I use it while I'm spinning. So I need to be spinning basically, sorry, it's kind of, maybe if I put my hand there, a 2-ply, but like fingering lace weight yarn. Okay. So I met someone at Flagwell and Fiber who wanted me to do that. I wonder if this will stick just right here. Probably not when I'm spinning. So I have to put this somewhere where I will remember it and where my kids won't bug it. I'll put it on top of the bookcase here. Now I have a video, so if I forget, I can just rewatch to know where I put that. But anyhow, I need to do that. I have my bobbin already set up. I like the smaller part of the bobbin in front and the larger in back. Other spinners may disagree with me there, so if you have a strong opinion, please let me know. I'm going to hook it around the first hook, move my Katrinkles. This is the hook to help you get it out. So you stick it through, oh gosh, I don't know the right names, I'm sorry, I think the orifice. You can't see it right here, and it's too hard for me to move my camera, but there's a hole that the hook goes through. You snag this feeder yarn and you slide it through. You can also just hang your hook right here. You might as well like have your wheel work for you, right? So the fiber I was commissioned to use is from Four Corners Yarns, which unfortunately they decided to close this year. But it was a company that supported Indigenous makers. And so this is High Desert 2, and it is, oh, blurry, 60% Navajo or Merino, 40% Navajo Churro. I'm in Flagstaff, and it is a navy colorway. So I did think to pull it a little bit so that it'd be easier and faster to spin, because I am starting, there's nothing on my bobbin right now. But it's already pre-drafted and it's a pretty thin, like some roving is very thick and wide and others are thinner. So this is one of the thinner ones. So what I'm going to do is, I know my spinning wheel pretty well now because I've been spinning on this for like 7 or 8 years. I really love my spinning wheel. Haven't tried too many since my beginner class at Grandma's Spinning Wheel in Tucson. If you want to learn how to spin, I highly recommend trying out theirs to find which one you like. I did like this one at Grandma's Spinning Wheel, but there were a few others. So anyhow, I know these probably could be replaced on each side, but I just tighten it a little bit. Can you even see until this guy gets a little pulled out. And then I take my fiber and I just pull it out a little bit. And I'm left-handed, but I was taught to spin right-handed because that's how most people are. So I just put a little bit around the edge. Sometimes I also spin standing up, which again, people will disagree with. Since I'm filming and I think it's easier to show you standing up, that's what I'm going to do. But I know it's not good for your back or posture. Then I put my right foot down first. Sometimes I tend to spin, like if I'm only going to switch to one foot, even though this is a double treadle, I tend to spin here. Let me see if I can show you my feet. Yeah, I tend to spin if I'm going to use one foot with just my right foot. I also used my right foot when I played soccer, and I was a very poor soccer player, so disregard that. But I know some people have a preference. Okay, so you can see it's starting to put twist in here. and then I pull. I kind of start slowly because sometimes when I spin, it doesn't suck up right away, or I put too much twist in it. I'm kind of doing a modified long draw right now, but just kind of taking, and of course when you're spinning really fine like this, and I think I need the spinning wheel can intake the yarn really quickly, and then you'll need to like refeed it through. So I also start slow until I can kind of feel the spin in my yarn. I'm not as like picky as some spinners are about how many treadles per length of yarn before you feed it onto the bobbin, but some people are really particular about that. I think it's kind of fun with hand spun not to be super precise, but if you disagree, that is totally fine. I would love to hear why in the comments, because maybe you'll change how I am as a spinner. Also, with a spinning wheel, one thing that I like about the Traveler is the wheel faces me like in a horizontal manner. And so when I have it go, you can spin two ways, one for knitting, one for crochet. Initially, Sydney, who I'm spinning for, wanted it to be for crochet. However, the yarn she's working with that I showed you on my Katrinkles just there, that had the other twist. And so when you're working with two different yarn bases, for instance, as long as they're the same weight, it should work unless you're purposefully using different weights, but that's beside the fact. Another important thing to consider is that the twist is in the correct direction, that if you're working with an S twist, both yarns have it, or a Z twist, both yarns have it, because otherwise it could look kind of wonky where you trade them or where you like mix them together. If you do choose to do that, I recommend alternating those two skeins for a few rows so it's not so jarring when you switch from one to the other. So I tend to spin for knitters because that's my main craft of choice. And so I go clockwise the first time for the single ply. And then when I ply my yarns together, I go counterclockwise, and that helps create a balanced yarn. So you'll notice right here that my yarn is fairly thin. It is in the lace weight, and it's not super even because I'm just getting started. Okay, I'm gonna pull some out though, and it's actually ripping. I didn't put enough twist in there. Yep, that's what I was afraid of. So, but that's okay. Because I showed you how to get started, and this happens sometimes, I think to every spinner. I don't know, maybe the really good ones this doesn't happen to a lot. So I'm gonna have to refeed it. What I like to do when yarn breaks like that, and that's also why I tend to just have this dangle most of the time, because I make mistakes. I'm not, I mean, I think I'm a pretty good spinner, but I allow myself to make mistakes. So anyhow, we have these thin pieces that were already a little bit spun. They can be really fragile, so what I like to do is to like even them out and combine them with the rest of the roving. That way I don't make the same mistake again. So I already adjusted this by twisting this, and that can help control how quickly the fiber or new yarn is taken in. Okay, so I'm going to start over again. So for those of you who are just getting started with spinning, like what I love about spinning is it's super relaxing. And especially at the beginning, you can make a mistake and it's not a big deal. I feel it's not really a big deal in general. Okay, so I'm treadling with just one foot right now, really slowly. And I kind of do the long draw. I use my right hand to let a certain amount of twist in the main here. Then what I do, especially early on, is I add more twist in and then I feed it onto the bottom. So let me just show you how I'm using my hands. Hopefully you can see I'm trying to angle them down. So I add some twist, let a little twist go. So like this holds a twist here, and then I let a little twist between my hands so that you don't want too much twist, because if you have too much twist, you can't pull. And sometimes you have to do what I just did there, which is you pause the treadle. And so the twist is going this direction right now. So I'll untwist like that movement to take the twist out. and then that can control the thickness of the yarn that I'm creating. So some people like to have different widths in their yarn, and that can be part of art yarn or just their style. And it just depends on how you want your yarn to be and what you want it to look like. I'm trying to make this for Sydney. I think she's doing a sweater. And so you kind of want it to be more uniform so that when you're using your needles, there's not holes or it's not too thick. Okay, so I'm gonna go again. I'm just gonna start a little bit and kind of get a feel for it. As I feel more confident, I'm sorry, I can't really move. And when you're, my phone, which I'm filming on right now since I'm actively spinning, I put a little bit more twist in because it's really fine. Then I slow down again, let more twist into the fiber. So there are different ways to draw the fiber. And one is the long draw, and you can also spin from the fold, or you can just spin from this. I like spinning from this. There's woolen and worsted. I'm probably doing a blend right now. But when I was at Grandma's spinning wheel and they taught me to spin, they told me that this, my right hand, which I'm using, it should never squeeze so tightly as to like hurt a baby bird. So sometimes I do squeeze tightly because I'm a kind of stressed person, but sometimes I don't. So now you might think, okay, I want to see how this is going to look finished. So I'm going to stop treadling. I'm just going to fold it like this and let it create that yarn. However, it's not on the bobbin yet. And so what we want to do is we want to let it get on the bobbin. And then we just kind of let it come out. And then we can let it fold in on itself. And you just kind of straighten it out. And I can use my little tool to see that it's kind of between fingering, and lace. It might be a little on the thinner side. So now I'm going to go grab my sample really fast. And normally I'm not this precise when I'm starting because I'm just spinning for myself, and I just kind of like to see what happens. But you can see that the colors are super similar and they're about the same width. So you don't have to be as precise as I am when you're starting a spin, because sometimes that takes the fun out of it, and we craft for fun. But other times you're looking for a very precise yarn. You want to spin yarn for, and mine might be a little too thin. You see how it just broke there? I knew it was going to break because it was too thin, so I just stopped treadling and pulled it off. Then what I do is I hold the fiber with the main yarn, and I kind of pull a little bit of the fiber because I don't want to be too thick, and then it kind of fixes itself. For me, when I spin, I know a beginner will be like, you can't say it goes on feel. I don't know what I'm feeling for. That's true, and I am so sorry. I guess I should count my treadles so I can let you know. So that messed up again. Okay, so I'm going to start and I'm going to stop treadling. Let's start again. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I put about roughly 20 treadles into this yarn. Now this yarn is very fine, and when you spin thinner, finer yarn, which is really hard as a beginner because often you want to treadle quickly, but you don't have to. And so then the spinning wheel can suck it in, and then you have to start over, and it can be really frustrating. So if you know you want to just start and spin really fine yarn, go for it, but just know to treadle slowly and to put more twist in. You put more twist into finer yarn than you do for chunkier yarn. And in fact, when you're done and you're like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom or get a drink, I just wind it around here a few times and it basically stays. But I'm going to show you some examples of different types of spins, and just so you can see what you can do. So this is the only one actually that I've spun, and this is actually a 3-ply Navajo spin. And that means that all the colors stay together and it can create a gradient. And I can do a tutorial for how to spin that. I also sell yarn, hand spun yarn from Sherry Karabonic, who's from Tucson, and she's a master spinner. And you can see her style is a little different from mine. You can see there's some thick and some thin in here. And sometimes and this happens to everyone, sometimes the ply is tighter or looser, depending on where you are. And then you have this, and this is also a 2-ply. A lot of spin on hand spun yarn are 2-ply. 2-ply can help give your yarn balance and consistency in its thickness because, it's just more consistent when you have 2 threads going around. Also, when you ply yarn, it gives it more strength over time. And so a lot of spinners do that. I really like to spin fractal style yarn, which actually all my fractal yarn is sold out right now, which is awesome. So after I'm done spinning this for Cindy, I'm planning to make more. Another thing to consider is if you're doing a 1-ply yarn, you probably want more twists because it lasts longer. Single ply yarns can get, oh my goodness, what's it called? Those little bumps in the fabric, pills. They can pill faster, and you don't really want single ply yarn for projects that will get a lot of friction, like gloves or socks. Maybe a shawl or a scarf if it's not under a coat, because they can pill like that and they can fall apart faster. So a fad that happened during the pandemic was to use basically roving, that looks like this, to hand knit or hand crochet a blanket, which was super cuddly and soft. However, this is not, you can just pull it and it kind of comes apart. And so those don't really last that long, especially as a blanket. They look beautiful as long as you don't use them. So that's something to take into consideration. And so there's a lot of information in this little video about spinning yarn. If you're a knitter or crocheter, which ways to spin so that you get a balanced yarn. Balanced means that when you take it off the wheel, it hangs straight and doesn't like kink to one side or not. Granted, there are finishing techniques for this. This is why there are like spinning books, because there's a lot of information to take in. But as a beginner, what I would recommend is like get it started through the orifice. Pay attention to your bobbin. You don't want the yarn to fill up on one of these hooks. You want it to go down and be kind of even, because if it falls apart, it can be a tangled mess. So I just pay attention to that. Pay attention to the feel. But again, sometimes if you overspin a section, it can create a cool effect if that's what you're going for. It really just depends on you. So I'm probably going to I think it's called sampling this yarn one more time in another minute or so to make sure that it's the thickness that I'll need, and then I should be good. Since this is a single color yarn, I mean, yes, it'll be about a consistent color because it is hand dyed roving, and when you dye wool before it's in yarn, you get more of a solid color rather than a semi-solid color. So when you buy a solid color yarn, and all my yarn that I've dyed is in the other room, when you dye a yarn that's already in yarn form, it's usually semi-solid because the dye doesn't penetrate, as consistently. If you dye the wool, it is more consistent. Okay, so I just joined those, and that used to be my biggest fear as a spinner, which is what I should probably show you guys. Okay, let's say I'm just going to rip this. Okay, so let me spin this section. I usually like to keep it connected because I'm always worried about, will there be a join? Like, can you see where one piece of this fiber ended and another began? And that was one of my concerns as an early spinner. So I'm going to show you how I handle that. And there are more than one way. There's more than one way to handle this. I'm also an English teacher, so hopefully my grammar is good. Even though you shouldn't end a sentence with good, at least traditionally. So let's see, getting to the end of the fiber. I try to speak correctly. As a teacher in class, I say a lot, as my students know. So I pull this out a little bit more, so there's not much there and there's no spin in it. You can pull and it'll just like fall apart, and that's okay. So I grab the other end, and it's just like last time. I just kind of combine the two, and my thumb's been holding the spin, or the twist, excuse me. And so when I let go, it comes in and it kind of joins. So you can't see my bobbin, I don't think. Nah, not really from this height. I'm kind of short too, but it's about even height. So I'm going to move it to the third. And then I'm going to slowly make sure it joins. Sometimes in a join, and you can't see the join. Sometimes when you join, it can be a little thicker or a little thinner, but in the scheme of things, you won't notice. So even for my very first class at Grandma's Spinning Wheel, the way they saw me spinning, they thought I'd be a lace weight spinner. And I do tend to spin finer, but there are spinning courses with different fibers, different types of wool, and different wools spin differently. Sometimes you need a long draw, sometimes you do a short draw, and I can model that too. A short draw, you just kind of do this, and it gives you more control because you can see how much fiber is going in. I guess you can't really see, but I'm just kind of pulling until I see the thickness that I want. Then I let more spin come in. And when I do this, when I pull with my thumb initially, it does kind of choke the bird a little bit. And that's kind of why I like the long draw, because I can pull and it'll be finer and I'm not choking the bird. I know it sounds really more, but there are a lot of like dark metaphors in crafting. I wonder if it's because crafting takes our stress away, and I don't know. So that's how you do the short draw and then the long draw. And the long draw, I think, is part of worsted. I always get worsted and woolen spin mixed up. One, the fibers are tighter together, and the other's a loftier yarn because there's more air. And if you spin from the fold, which is not how I'm doing it, then it is loftier. There's more air inside because the fibers are not going in the same direction like mine is. And that's also like roving versus sliver, and then there's bats. There's so many different things. Okay, so before I end this video, which is already 23 minutes, I'm going to put the rest of this in. And then I'm actually going to put this around really fast so I can grab from the bookcase my little piece of yarn. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unwrap, pinch right here, pull off, let this kind of ply together so you can kind of see what it's going to look like. And mine is a little bit thicker, so I need to spin a little bit finer. And then it'll match really closely to the yarn that I was given. So if you're trying to spin a yarn to match one that you have, that's one way to do it. Granted, hand spinning reacts a little bit differently from mill spun yarn because it is more energetic depending on how many treadles you have per segment of the yarn. So I know I need to spin a little bit finer. This is going pretty fine. Another thing to consider is staple length. Different sheep have different lengths of their fiber, and that can make long draw or short draw easier. Like cotton has a shorter staple, and so a long draw doesn't really work because it's not a long staple. Anyhow, please let me know down below in the comments what you would like my next spinning tutorial to be. I also sell some roving in my Merino e Vino store, and also some of my hand spun. So I hope you take a look, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.